Greetings, it's Robert Phoenix here, and I am bringing you another edition of the Astro Weather. Look at how geothermal the world is. Wouldn't you kind of like to be there in some ways? I would. Thank you for being here and waiting for me. I apologize for being tardy. It was a late night. See, I can't even say it. It was a late night last night. A late night last night as I was on with Clyde Lewis on the late shift. So on ground zero, talking about King Charles, the Yellow King, Prince William, soon to be King William, amongst many other things on last night's show. So it was a late night, and the late night extended even beyond that. So again, I want to thank you for your time and your patience. Let's see, man. Scorpio Moon. I gotta get lined up here. Make sure we got all things together, all together now. I'm almost there. Almost there. Did you guys catch that show last night at all? I think Clyde has some replays over on his website. I don't know. Somebody said that there was a paywall. I wasn't, if that's true, I wasn't aware of that. To be perfectly frank with you, that's one of my mother's sayings. To be perfectly frank with you. All right, we're almost there. I just have to make an adjustment on the old Astro Weather tip. This is what happens when you pre-plan the shows or pre-program the shows late at night, so that I can hopefully be here for you. Can't even fucking talk today. Be here for you this morning. Okay, one more little click, and no, I don't want that. I just want that. All right, there we go. There she blows. Let's bring it up. Let's take a look at the Astro Weather. 7th of February, 2024. I see now. Here we go. The Capricorn Moon. My bad. There it is. At the right time, it's 12 p.m. Fuck. This is a problem. This is what happens. My apologies. I'm usually not this much of a fuck up. We're having, just to be perfectly frank with you, we are having some challenges on the domestic front. And they are lunar challenges. Let's put it that way. So let me do this again. And there we go. All right. We're going to get this motherfucker right yet. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? That's more like it. See, it helps to know theoretically where the sun is or isn't at a certain point of time and day. It's the Capricorn Moon. And it is moving into the balsamic position. So we have 15 more degrees of the Capricorn Moon, which we'll experience tonight and moving into tomorrow. And then we go into a very critical lunar phase, which is the first balsamic moon in Capricorn as it relates to Pluto in Scorpio. This is the first one. Remember back when Pluto went into Aquarius last year, this moon was not in phase during that time. So this is a very powerful moon. This is an extremely powerful moon. It is an initiatory cycle. And as I said, we have 15 more degrees of this moon. So by the time we go into the early morning hours of tomorrow, we are in the deep balsamic phase, and that moon is literally going through the gauntlet here, right? It is hitting Venus, Mars, Pluto, Mercury, every single personal planet the moon is going to be in contact with, and the most impersonal or transpersonal of all planets, Pluto, the Lord of the underworld. And this is going to be a very intense cycle, very intense lunar cycle. Because again, what are we talking about? Ultimately, we're talking about a new moon in Aquarius, and that is just prior to the Super Bowl. We're going to have the moon in Pisces on Super Bowl Sunday. It's going to be there with Saturn, but we have a lot of ground to cover here. Emotions are wow. How do I describe this? How do I articulate this? Well, first of all, I think there is a feeling of being frozen and stuck. Like we it's like walking through um, a field of hardcore frost, right? Like hardcore frost. And it's not quite snow, but it's cold enough, and there's enough sort of, you atmospheric precipitation and dew. So the frost almost feels like it's cold, right? It almost feels like it's snow, not cold, but snow. And that's where we're headed emotionally here. It's, last night on Clyde Lewis, we were talking about the inauguration ceremony of King Charles and what happened there. And there was this image of the Grim Reaper that showed up. And people have seen that image, and it was captured under the image of, of this royal arch, right? The royal arch, and there are astrological symbols associated with the royal arch. And at high noon, or at the very center of the royal arch, is the astrological sign of Cancer. And this is why we're talking about the moon, and we're talking about King Charles. And during that ceremony, apparently, the Reaper was seen, spotted by Camilla. And there is this story called the Yellow King, which I alluded to earlier. And there is a character in the the book. It's a series of stories, short stories that are part of an overarching theme. And there's a character in the book called Camilla, and she basically has this kind of ongoing dialogue with not just death, but it's the death of the Yellow King. And it's a very very strange, high strange, and kind of meta synchronistic moment in time. And the reason that I'm talking about it is that it feels very much like the Fisher King and the Wasteland that is written about by T.S. Eliot, where there's a kind of modern retelling of the Fisher King. And this transit of the moon feels like I said it was the gauntlet. And I also said it was a kind of 40, an icy field. And the moon is actually moving through what I would call a metaphorical wasteland at the beginning of this day or wherever you are. This is a very powerful time. The next 48 hours are uh, very intense because the moon is cycling through the remnants of the old world. Capricorn represents the old world. It does represent time in the hourglass. Strangely enough, LeBron James, who is a Capricorn, put out this very cryptic tweet where he had an hourglass in his hand. And I don't think LeBron James was having any kind of synchromistic commentary on the position of the moon in King Charles and the Reaper in our time. No, he was using that symbol to tell people that the trade deadline in the NBA is coming up and will close. The trade window will close on Thursday. So teams in the NBA will have to make deals before 5 o'clock on Thursday, and the Lakers are not doing well. And so he's basically making a statement that we're running out of time to make a trade and to have a change to our team. And yet somehow, even LeBron James, like a broken clock, can be right twice a day. Because that's what this feels like. It feels like the sands of the hourglass are just slipping through here with the moon. And we're trying to get some form of comfort. We're trying to get some form of relief as it goes. And, Venus in Capricorn is not the warmest and fuzziest position for Venus. And Mars in Capricorn is Spartan, and it is poised and ready for action, but it does not stand on sentimentality. It may recognize ceremony, but not sentimentality. And only ceremony briefly, as long as it can get what it needs in order to act. Right. So this is all about getting orders, marching orders here. Here comes the moon coming through. And it is restless as fuck. Right. And there's nothing there. And it feels like we understand that we're coming to the end of something. And there's little we can do about it in some ways. I would say the term would be brace for impact. Reminds me of the story of Leonard Skinner. Leonard Skinner's crashing of their plane was really the day the music died. It was really the day the music died because of everything that Leonard Skinner stood for. By the way, Mr. Van Zant, Ronnie Van Zant, was a Capricorn. And here we go as the moon continues to move through this gauntlet. It is going to conjunct with Pluto, and it is very clear, very, very clear that we are in the throes of the death of the old world. This is the old world order right here. And Aquarius represents the new world order. We have versions of that for ourselves, right? It's not just that, some wonk in Davos or Austria or wherever the fuck Bill Gates lives. It's not that just some wonk somewhere is going to proclaim that we eat too much meat or we cannot have any more gas stoves, right? I mean, there is some of that, but this is also about our own personal lives because right now, we're as reflective as the time as we've ever been in a lot of ways because these societal changes interact and they impact our lives as well. So we're if we look at astrology as time, and Capricorn is the great timekeeper, we are moving into a synchronous alignment with the beginning of a new time, and it's coming. And I'm not saying that we're going to wake up 2 days from now or 2.5 days from now, and all of a sudden the world would be a bright and better shining place, and we're all going to sing "It's a Small World" after all. But I believe that based on this transit, there will be very clear signs that the old world has passed and that there is a new world coming. And so, how does that affect all of us, right? Because there is this trickle down effect, there is this ripple down effect of these collective or mundane moments. So, we have to define for ourselves. We have to define for ourselves what it is to experience a new dawn or a new time. I was watching a very interesting documentary on Edward Bernays over the weekend, and Edward Bernays was one of the godfathers of the, I believe it was it the 1939 World's Fair? It was the World's Fair in New York, and it was staged during a time when Roosevelt was president, and Roosevelt and Bernays hated each other, which I was not aware of, because they had fundamentally different organizational principles and how to socially engineer society. And one of the things that Bernays did is that he amongst others staged this World's Fair that took place in New York City, and and I've covered this World's Fair before, and it's very esoteric and very modern and very Aquarian. And of course, Roosevelt is an Aquarian. And the theme of the World's Fair was the dawn of a new day. So Bernays was trafficking in astrological and theosophical themes. Like he was invoking Aquarius during that World's Fair. And and this is kind of where we are, right? This is the moon coming in, and symbolically, the rendering of the new world or the new order and the dawn of a new day. Literally, when we have this new moon in Aquarius, it will be the dawn of a new day. So, it's going to impact us, like our feelings, right? Like there's no area of our life that this balsamic moon is not touched by. Relationships, the manifestation of will, resources. And then the conjunction with Mercury will be profound, and it will feel like we're headed towards this new place. And in a lot of ways, there's no control over it, because the sun is out front, right? The sun is the chariot, the blazing chariot coming across the sky. Mercury is not in charge here. Mercury at best is the co-pilot, right? At best is the co-pilot. So when we have the sun in front, events take on a life of their own. So we're just looking at this from what's going on out there. Now, if you're asking me, I think this interview with Vladimir Putin by Tucker Carlson has something to do with it, because this interview is going to be one of the most collectively watched interviews ever, right? It puts us into this Aquarian position of the global village, because who doesn't want to see Tucker Carlson interview Vladimir Putin? I want it. I don't care. I don't care if it's astroturf. I don't care. I don't care. I want to watch it. I want to see it. And there are people who may hate Vladimir Putin, may hate Tucker Carlson. I guarantee you they're going to watch it. And that's just in this country. And how many people in Russia do you think will watch this interview? And how many people in Europe, with their curiosity piqued, will watch this interview? So this is a very important cultural moment. And it's important in the sense that, again, it binds us to a collective experience that we're all having together. Not all of us, but a lot of us. And this interview will air on Tucker's website, and it will also air on Twitter X. And I think the numbers that Tucker has done will be dwarfed by this interview. And I think it has a ramification. I think it has a domino effect. And it is something that initiates, again, a separation between the old world and the new world, for better or worse. Like the old world, which is trying to instigate and initiate this new world or this new order, and have these things that we associate with it die out, right? But at the same time, it also represents something very different for people outside of that. And we talk about things like a new age or a dawn of a new time, right? Again, it's a very World's Fair language, the Bernaysian World's Fair. And it applies to us in our own lives. I mean, that's not just this cycle of time that's being played out and wrung out here for, these systems of the world or the systems of the realm, right? This is also about our lives, because we are intertwined with it as much as it is intertwined with us. So I feel like we're all going through this. We all have our versions of the outworn, the outdated, the things that, in some ways, if we don't voluntarily cast aside, will be cast aside for us. So how do we interact with this kind of information? Well, usually you go through your stuff on a weekend and you go to Goodwill and drop off things you don't need anymore. I would say that this would be a very good time to do that, and to don't use a lot of sentimentality to discard things that ultimately have reached their apex, right? They've reached their time. And a lot of really sharp people out there are always sort of divesting themselves of things that they don't need, right? It creates space in their life for something new. And invariably, it almost always happens. This is one of those times where you look around and say, okay, what can I get rid of, or what can I divest myself as or with? And this divestment, we're going to go back again because we're really sort of double tracking here. And this whole idea of divestment is going to be part of the conversation. And invariably, we get into conversations around Israel and the whole BDS thing, right? That's going to be part. I mean, this balsamic moon is just fucking unique in that it has a very powerful personal import, and then of course the collective import. And we see the two of them again intertwined. And what's interesting, right, is that the moon is the ruler of Cancer. And when we think of Cancer, what do we think of? We think of water. And so as the moon really moves off this position from the sun, it's almost as if the water bearer is completing, I wouldn't say it's completing its mission, but it's fulfilling its design. And that the heavens are emptied. Like, that's a big symbol here. So I don't know what's happening in California with the atmospheric river, but this would be indicative of somewhere there's a major dump coming from the skies with this moon. Maybe it's areas that have been arid and parched and could actually use some precipitation, or maybe it's something more or more in an area that has already had a great deal of moisture and precipitation. This is a fascinating transit. I'm telling you right now, there's so much going on here, so much going on. And we do have this trine happening with Uranus. Things speed up quickly with the Moon Uranus trine. We've got Venus in that trine, and we have Mars kind of separating from it, but still sort of in the throes. So things are moving very, very quickly, even though it feels like we're sort of coming to the end of this particular cycle. It's happening fast. And one of the words that I would use would be adaptability. Adaptability. How are you adaptive in your own life to changes? And some of these changes maybe just be out of your control. You look around, we're getting ready to experience major layoffs. UPS getting rid of 12,000 people. That's just for starters. And you may not experience that, but somebody in your family might. One of your friends might. Hell, you might too, right? But so it's going to be about being adaptable. And we're going to have to be adaptable if we're going to get through this time and the time that we're moving towards in general. Adaptability, novelty, and responding to our situations in ways that are unique to some extent. And again, I'll use the word not overly sentimental. These are not really there is like the waning of the day or the waning of the time that can evoke sentimentality. But there's no time for it. Right? There's no time for sentimentality. There's just time for adaptability and novelty and rewiring your emotional body in a way that you can deal with these changes that are coming. And if they come tomorrow or Friday or next week, I guarantee you they're coming. They are coming. So this is really the big story. When we get that moon coming off and being this new moon, right, and literally the dawn of a new day, it's going to come in and square Uranus. And that to me, that square is cruelty. Like there's something objectively cruel about that Moon Uranus square. But again, if you're adaptable, right, if you've kind of gone through these changes, then you have to again course correct or become super objective with your emotions. You can do it. It's a brief period of time, and nobody's telling you that you should sacrifice your humanity as a result of that. No. But we're going to, in some ways, have to witness this in our own lives. We've got the sextile. I'm getting ahead of myself, but the moon is going to come in and start to sextile Chiron, and it's a very quick process, and there's a healing process that's established rather rapidly. This is a trip. I mean, these are, as an astrologer, and I look at this, oh, am I being over dramatic? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think we all feel like something has been building up. It's been building up and building up and building up. And at some point, man, that dam has got to break. And that is when this moon comes in and crosses the sun right there. Right there. And we have the sun square Uranus. We talked about this, the ruler of the sun. And it's breaking, right? It's kind of breaking the rules. It's breaking all the rules. I have this image in my head. It was like, what's the guy from was it the congressman or the senator, the goofy ass son of a bitch that broke the fire alarm inside the White House during the filibuster? I always get him mixed up with Alvin Bragg. But that's the image I have. It's like breaking the glass and pulling the fire alarm. And, in his case, it's not a good thing. Although nothing ever happened to him. He got a scolding. He got a reprimand. But it is that same kind of effect, right? It's that same kind of effect. So be careful, right? Be careful as we move into this critical phase, which for all intents and purposes looks like crisis. And, make sure that it is really a crisis before you jump into the fray and declare yourself um, a participant or a witness on either side of it. Pallas has moved and it's in Sagittarius now. Ceres has moved and it's in Capricorn now. Let's talk about those two asteroids. Ceres and Capricorn, it's just come off this lunar conjunction. And again, Capricorn is not, it's not sentimental, right? It's not maternal, but Ceres theoretically is maternal. It has to do with nurturing and caring. And this position, Ceres, is more like Vesta. Vesta is the crone of the zodiac, but Ceres moves into the Vesta position in some ways. And it's like the grandmother who has to raise the children for whatever reason, the absent mother. And it it invokes the image of the woman who is spending 21 years in jail now because her son went off in a school in Michigan. And she may have other kids. I don't know. I would think that perhaps she has a mother. I mean, this is what it reminds me of. It's like the home is barren now. And this is not, look, it happens, right? Grandmothers have to raise grandchildren sometimes, but it's not always the story that you want, right? There's a natural progression and order of things. And also in a lot of ways, from a collective level, we have these older women in power like Nancy Pelosi, and they're almost outliving their ability to nurture and care and give a shit, right? So this is going to be very interesting with Ceres moving into Capricorn. Again, for you, nurturing your long-term plan, whatever that is, staying in the game, having some degree of accomplishment, aspiration. Ceres moves in and it's going to mirror the moon and come through and have the exact same transits, albeit a bit of a different process, but it's the same. Now, Pallas, we know, is about pattern recognition. And in Sagittarius, we're seeing the big picture, right? We're seeing the big picture before it happens. Pallas in Sagittarius is prophetic, right? And it almost feels like now we're moving into these apocryphal biblical times in some ways with Pallas and Sagittarius, and seeing the enormity of events and players on the world stage. Keep your eye on the Pope. He's a Sagittarius. Keep your eye on the Pope. Keep your eye on the Vatican. So those are going to be some very interesting developments as it relates to it and him. Okay, speaking of the Vatican and religious figures, let's get into our star of the day. Our True Hemp Science star of the day. And our True Hemp Science star of the day is Sir Thomas More. Now, before I talk about Sir Thomas More, I just want to say that True Hemp Science is a very important part of this broadcast and my other streams and broadcasts because I only have one sponsor besides robertphoenix.com, and it is truehempscience.com, and it is some of the best CBD that you can find on the internet. It is all organic. It is procured and sourced from places all over the country. My friend Chris only gets the best, source product, only gets the best leaves, right? And we're talking you know, distilled and processed in a way that the CBD is able to retain its integrity, which is a very important thing to understand. When you're not all CBDs are created and made the same. Not only that, but he has products there you're not going to find. You will not find these products in many other. And trust me, there are some other CBD purveyors that are really good, but some of the stuff that Chris has, you won't find anywhere else because those are his concoctions and his creations. All you got to do is spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, 15MINS, and you will get a free goodie bag of some of his concoctions along with whatever you order. $150 more gets you free shipping, and there's always the 30-day money-back guarantee. All right, let's talk about Sir Thomas More. He was the author of a book called Utopia. And of course, he's an Aquarian, and he would write about utopia. It's a very interesting book. And I would say that Huxley knew this book inside and out, and then applied futuristic and science fiction elements and models to More's utopia in a lot of ways, right? More is talking, writing about a society that is not governed by a monarch, right? Which is odd because More is also a cleric, right? He is a bishop, and he was the representative of Rome during the time of King Henry VIII. And the Reformation is taking place. And of course, this is where the Reformation takes root in England, because Henry wants to divorce his wife so that he can marry Anne Boleyn and sire a male heir to the throne. And he approaches More, who is also his friend, on a number of occasions to grant him a divorce. More, being, of course, a staunch Catholic and a fixed sign Aquarian, will not grant him his favor. So as a result of this, a scheme is hatched, and Thomas More is betrayed by his page, right? The underling who keeps his records and who is essentially his scribe. And he does this because he wants to attain power. He wants to move ultimately into More's position. And what's interesting about More is that he is an Anglican, right? He's married. You know, he's not a Catholic, but he still has these ties in a lot of ways to the Holy Roman Empire. But even though he is an Anglican, he is not going to grant the divorce of Henry. He's not going to do it. And so eventually what happens is he suffers betrayal. And the betrayal is he winds up being put into prison because he has been given a bribe, right? He's been given a bribe. And hold on a second. And he winds up losing his head. That's what happens to Sir Thomas More. But he achieves saint-like status. That is the nature of Sir Thomas More. He becomes he becomes knighted, right? He becomes knighted. And I have to go because I have to engage in my personal life. More on Thomas More tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking part in Astro Weather. Have a great day. Bye for now.